promised Jape earlier today at the funeral home that when he went for his ride in that Cadillac, that I'd play him some music that he'd enjoy. I talked to a lot of people, Slim, to Jerry Boynton, Robert Hooker, Roy Dixon, and I remembered my own memories of J.P. as to what kind of music he really liked. And the funeral itself is a pretty grim and saddening business. And to be taking a happy man that brought happy people much, much joy in the world on a funeral ride is extra sad and grim. So I said to that closed coffin, Jape, I'm going to be on this afternoon, and when they take you for the ride, I'll ask them to call me. And they did. And when they do, I'm going to get out these songs you like the best, because although you liked the rock and roll that was your bread and butter, and you liked the hillbilly tunes that you used to learn back home with your folks, I know that what really made your old toes tap and that smile come on your lips was that New Orleans jazz and ragtime music. So I thought I'd send you along with it. What a way to go. With your New Orleans jazz music. Jape, I wanted you to know that we sure got a lot of mail from a lot of people that were friends of yours that you never knew you had, and most of them were worried about Teensy. Like this letter that wrote from Worth, Texas, and said, I hope I'm not too bold because you don't know me and I don't know you. Mrs. Richardson, I'm 61 years old, and I lost my husband last year. And I want you to have these clippings that were in our paper and this card of condolence, dear. Then there was another letter that came in from Lindsay, California, from one of your little teenage fans that just knew you as the Big Bopper and wants Bill to send you some pictures. So Bill will send them. Don't worry about it. You got a telegram, Jape, from Private First Class Elvis Presley and Colonel Parker yesterday. And I thought you might get a little kick out of this, just fair as here on Earth. You got a summons from the city of Beaumont, Texas, the clerk of Corporation Court, for 2 traffic violations over parking for your Dodge PF 2487 on September the 17th and December the 18th, and you owe the city of Beaumont $2. But don't worry about it, Jape. Don't worry about it. You know, J.P. would have gotten his gold record from Mercury for the millionth sale of Chantilly lace next Sunday, had he lived. But kind of the way I feel about it, and the way your manager, Bill Hall, feels about it, Jape, is that the folks that are left here on Earth are going to get the gold record. And everything you got's golden, boy. Everything you got. Because that old J.P. was a clean man. I guess that's one of the things that made us love him so much. He was a clean man in his mind. He was a clean man in his heart. And you know, that's the sort of a man that can get along easy in heaven. And we're rolling him right to the graveyard in New Orleans style. And it may not seem right to some of you, but it seems right to me and J.P. Now, don't call me on the phone because there's nobody here but me and Jape. Listening to these fine, fine old fat Royal Street songs. You know, Jape, you came pretty close to writing some good New Orleans jazz yourself there in that Chantilly lace. You know that, don't you?
Hello, baby. Introduce it like a girl. Oh, baby, that's what I like.
You know, Jape, we couldn't believe it here last Tuesday. And we wouldn't believe it, in fact, till we made a bunch of phone calls and finally got the last final official word that it had happened to you. And when that happened, old Jack Neal put his head down in his hands and he cried. We didn't hardly do any broadcasting that day. But you learn to live with it, I guess, because death is natural and grief is natural. And you wanted so hard to get to the top in your art. And, Jape, there ain't nobody that can ever take that away from you, because you belong to the immortals now in the music world where you wanted to be. And I feel like you're listening as you take that ride this afternoon. And a little girl just called me on the phone a minute ago, even though I'd asked you all not to. And she said he just went by the house. And I said a little prayer for him. And I said, thank you, honey. Jape, you remember the day you got married and we all went down to St. Anthony's here in Beaumont? And you and that pretty little teensy came out. And she looked so calm and cool and collected and sweet and beautiful. And your face was flushed just as red as the brick on that old church house. And you were so shook up and confused that you kissed the best man and kissed me instead of the bride. I'll never forget that. And Beaumont will never forget that Jape-a-thon. You showed what you were made out of that time. I mean, in just plain iron nerve and physical stamina and courage. And even when you were goofy and kind of out of this world, and your mind was completely open to the truth, you never did say anything that you could be ashamed of, because it's just a pure sort of a boy right down to the very middle. And remember that goofy race we had that time where we raced to Lake Charles and back in an outboard motorboat and a Buick? And I cut the starter cord off because I'm a show-off, and you laughed at me and beat me in by 2.5 hours. And we had that big crowd of people out there. And later I had to roll you down the main street of Beaumont in a wheelbarrow. And when we went by the fire station, all the firemen came running out and knocked us out of the wheelbarrow with fire hoses. And we went down to Hubert Little's and stood in the showroom and made a broadcast and poured beer on each other's heads. I got pictures of all that, J.P. And how many fellows do you know get to go to the graveyard with the saints go marching in, playing in the background? You know that doesn't happen to just every guy, and you sure ain't just every guy. You wrote up a little bit of that New Orleans jazz yourself on that album.
Joe went out and walked in. Was old Sunday.
Ladies and gentlemen, you're listening to the funeral music of a fine man and a happy man that liked happy sounds and made people happy with them. To J.P. Richardson. Jape, I think of your radio career from the time you started at KTRM as a 16-year-old boy with Jack Neal, Roy Dixon, to when you and Slim Watts and Boyd Whitney cooked up the Big Bopper idea and began to make that bop music the top thing in this part of the country. And those great, great nights when you used to do the Club 990 and there was nobody could play the music like you could play them. Nobody in the world could put them together like you could put them together. Well, you got the Life magazine reporters on hand today, and the whole nation is missing you and grieving you. But I don't think any of them are like we are. And there's no bottom in my heart to tell you how I felt when I looked at little Teensy's face last night during the rosary. But God knows what he's doing. And he gives us grief, and he'll later give us solace and consolation. And she was praying. And I think everything is going to be fine with him, and I know everything is fine with you. And I'm just mighty glad I could play that old tailgate rambling music for you on this last ride. You'll be just about there now, old partner. Bye-bye.